I first took a look at the betting line for UFC Vegas 20, just the main card, right? It's a 6-fight main card, and we just got the late edition of Hill versus Yoder, right? And it's something that I had to really ponder on, take a look at, and see, okay, well, there's only a few things that really interest me here, because a lot of these lines seem fair, but some of these lines seem a little crazy, especially if you've watched these fighters or if you've seen the progression of these fighters, as the years have gone on and things of that nature. And I want to start off with, obviously the big one, the one that we're all here for, which is Rozenstruik versus Gane. So last fight for Cyril Gane, that kind of put him on the map, right? This dude is 7-0 in MMA, but he's 4-0 in the UFC. Very impressive. And he's only got one decision win so far, right? And that's Tanner Boser. I believe that's a UD over Tanner Boser. I believe so. So what it looks like right now for Cyril Gane is that this dude, the betting market really believes in him. They think that this is going to be the next champion, or this is going to be the dude who's just rising up those ranks really quickly. But we're forgetting about Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who was ranked at number 4. He was ranked at number 3 until the UFC put out their rankings this week. But this dude's no slouch, man. And it's interesting because he's kind of undersized for a heavyweight, right? So Cyril Gane, he's supposed to be this kind of like smaller heavyweight who moves more or less. He got the Muay Thai of like a welterweight or like a middleweight, right? But for Jairzinho Rozenstruik, this is going to be one of the many times, but kind of one of those rarest times. He's 6'2", man. He's a huge puncher. When we think of Rozenstruik, we're thinking about, okay, well, he's up there with the punch and power of Derek Lewis and of Francis Ngannou and all of that. So he has to be this huge character, right? This big dude who is just, smashing people and doing stuff like that. And while he is smashing people, he's not the biggest dude, but he's not this plodding heavyweight either. So Cyril Gane, who is clearly going to have the speed advantage here and just kind of, he has more tools in his arsenal. But Rozenstruik, he is no plodding heavyweight, man. He's got deceptive speed and on his combos when he's putting them out there, just bow, 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 bow. He goes pretty quickly. It's not the same thing as like, we're watching even a Derek Lewis, right? Derek Lewis, he's fast, but he's not the fastest heavyweight, right? He's just got that power to make up for everything. It's not like Ngannou. Ngannou got that crazy power and speed. Rozenstruik got a little less power than Ngannou, clearly, right? Ngannou's knocking everybody that he touches out. So Rozenstruik isn't going to knock you out with every punch, but he's got, I think he has the power advantage in this matchup versus Cyril Gane. So when I looked at the line and I said, okay, Gane minus 280, Rozenstruik plus 210. In heavyweights, man, anybody's got a puncher's chance. Anything can happen. And that's why for Rozenstruik, I think we got to take a look at it. We got to look at this heavyweight and say, okay, all right, bro, you might get outmaneuvered, but you still can go all 5 rounds. And we saw that when Rozenstruik faced off against Alistair Overeem, and he went all 5 rounds. He took Overeem's best shot, and it was just about a minute left in that 5th round. Hit him with that right hand, busted his whole lip open, all disgusting and all that, but at the end of the day, that power was evident. We saw it, and it translated over to the 5th round, which is why I really need to take a step back on this one, because Cyril Gane, man, he's running through people, right? So he's 5-0 in his last 5. So he's got TKO round 1, sub round 1, sub round 3, unanimous decision, and a TKO round 2, right? That's his last 5. He's just kind of running through these people. And while Rozenstruik, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All 5 of his last wins are by knockout, and 3 or 4 of them have only lasted up to the 2nd round. But like I said earlier, in that Alistair Overeem fight, he knocked him out with like a minute left in the 5th round. So when talking about gas tank, Rozenstruik has proven it, man. He's not doing the most wrestling and doing all of that stuff, which is a clear big advantage here for Cyril Gane, right? But at the end of the day, man, 32 years old for Rozenstruik, 30 years for Cyril Gane. I like the line, man. I like the line minus 280, and where we can get interesting is a couple prop bets, right? Because that's what we're here to really assess that value and see, okay, where can we really dive in? So Rozenstruik to win via knockout, TKO, or disqualification is at plus 300. So if we're believing Rozenstruik, right, he's got 10 knockouts on his record. He's only been knocked out once. He's never been submitted. And he's only been decision once. So it's like a majority of his fights, he's knocking people out. Will he be able to knock out Cyril Gane? I don't know. I think that's his best chance of winning, in all honesty. I don't really envision Rozenstruik winning on points. I think that'll be Cyril Gane all day long. But the plus 300 line is really, really interesting to me. Now, the next one is Cyril Gane via submission at plus 500. So if we're thinking about methods to victory, paths to victory, Cyril Gane has way more. He could knock you out. He could submit you like he just did in one of his recent fights. I believe it was Dontel Mays, right? He got him with a heel hook. He had him hurt bad the entire fight. It was clearly a domination of a fight. But at the end of the day, he was just like, all right, man, I got 30 seconds left to finish this fight. Snapped out that heel hook and called it, and that was it, right? So he has that capability, and that's kind of what I'm talking about, is he has those tools in his belt. He has those tools in his arsenal to be able to submit you or knock you out or, necessarily win on points. He can definitely do that as well. And that leads me to the next point, right? Cyril Gane via points at plus 240, right? So if we're favoring Cyril Gane to win, yes, we understand most heavyweight fights, they're not going to go all 5 rounds. But like I just said earlier, if Alistair Overeem and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, if they faced off and they went all 5 rounds, basically with just a minute left, if Alistair Overeem was somehow, some way able to just survive that punch, that little combo he put Rozenstruik put on him at the end, that would have been a decision. I think Alistair Overeem would have won the fight. Actually, he would have won via decision. So it's like, okay, well, Cyril Gane, maybe because Jairzinho Rozenstruik, his chin is tested. So maybe Cyril Gane isn't able to put him away. Why wouldn't he be able to win on points? And since Cyril Gane's already favored at minus 280, then why exactly is it a plus 240 for points? Do they really believe he's just going to knock this dude out, just going to run through Rozenstruik? I'm not sure. And that leads me to kind of the last one on this one, which is, for this fight to go over 3.5 rounds, the betting odd right now is plus 125. And that's really interesting to me because, once again, like I said, Rozenstruik, he has shown that he has the capability to be able to go all of those 5 rounds. Now, Cyril Gane, I'm not sure. But if Rozenstruik isn't able to put Cyril Gane out and Cyril Gane isn't able to put Rozenstruik out, I can definitely see this going above 4 rounds. I totally can. And maybe even getting a finish in round 4, take Cyril Gane to deep waters where he hasn't been before. And that's the one, like, real skill advantage, or not skill, just the experienced advantage for Rozenstruik, because he's already had that 5-round fight in the UFC, is that it's just like, all right, man, well, I know I could be there. What about you, Cyril Gane? You know, are you going to gas out in those first 3? So it'll be really interesting, man. And this is one of those heavyweight contests that gets me really, really excited. And even when I'm looking at the line, I do think Rozenstruik is a little disrespected. I think Cyril Gane put on a big show in his last outing. But nonetheless, man, just because you clipped Junior Dos Santos, you didn't knock him out. You know what I mean? He's still claiming, oh, I got hit in the back of the head and all that good stuff. But I think that this is going to be a big shakeup in the heavyweight division after the result of this fight, man. So I just wanted to really, really touch on that one, man, because in all honesty, Cyril Gane, he's bigger. So that's what's weird, right? He's bigger, but he can move quicker. Once he moves to southpaw and he starts spamming those, body kicks and kind of mixing it up with the Muay Thai, man, very skilled dude, man. Cyril Gane is absolutely no joke, but we're definitely going to have to see this weekend because it's kind of the same thing that people were doing to Derick Lewis, right? They're writing him off, saying, oh, Curtis Blades, he's just going to handle this. It's not going to be a problem. And we saw what happened. We saw the result of that fight where Derick Lewis said, no, I'm not going to let you wrestle me. I'm an All-American now. I'm going to uppercut you into oblivion and things of that nature. But nonetheless, let's move on to the next one, right? Because this next one really surprised me when I looked at it. I'm not sure what the opening odds were, right? But when I took a look at it, it was a little bit different than what it is now. So to see that Nikita Krylov and Magomed Ankalaev, right? I'm really high on Magomed Ankalaev, but to see that he's a minus 385 favorite over Nikita Krylov, who is 27-7 in MMA and he's 8-5 in the UFC, 11 knockouts, 15 submissions, 1 decision. Why are you such a heavy favorite over a dude who is that much of a stud? Maybe because Ankalaev, right? He has 9 knockouts, no submissions, 5 decisions. He's 14-1, 5-1 in the UFC. This one really puzzled me, man. Nikita Krylov is an absolute killer. And if you look at these two fighters respectively, and we look at their last 5, right, we see that Nikita Krylov, he's fought Johnny Walker, Glover Teixeira, Ovin St. Preux, John Blachowicz, right, the champ, light heavyweight champion right now, and then another cat named Maldonado. Now for Ankalaev, he got back-to-back versus Ion Cutelaba, right, knocked him out both times. He beat Dalcha Lungiambula and Klidson Abreu, which is very, very impressive. That was a really big win. And then Marcin Prachnio, man. So both of these dudes are just kind of running through these guys. And for Krylov, it's a little bit different, right? He's 3-2. Ankalaev, he's 5-0 in his last 5. But nonetheless, this is what we need to look at, man. Nikita Krylov is a very, very fast starter. Very fast starter. In that first round, he comes out with kicks. He's got the beautiful BJJ. He can go into the sprawls and do all of that craziness. So when I look at the line, I don't agree. And I think that Ankalaev is way too high of a favorite. So this is a good opportunity to throw a little bit of money on Nikita Krylov. It definitely is. But if we don't want to just go for the money line, right? If we're a little too hesitant because Ankalaev is a killer and he's patient and he can knock anybody out, well, let's look at a couple of props. If these two dudes are finishers, right? Nikita Krylov, legitimately, in all of his crazy fights, right? His 27 wins, 26 of them are via knockout or submission, which is, it's just crazy. You know what I mean? He's a Kyokushin karate striker with with legit sprawls in BJJ, like I mentioned earlier, and he averages at least one takedown in all of his last 5 fights. And he's only been to the third round 3 times in his 34 fights. And that's kind of the big key that I wanted to hit on. I just ran through all those stats, but that was the big key that I really wanted to hit on. He's only gone to a decision 3 times in 34 fights. So for the first prop bet that I'm seeing here, which is for the fight to end in under 2.5 rounds, it's at minus 165. And I think that's a really, really good play because clearly we have 2 knockout artists here, 2 finishing artists, right? Because Krylov, he could submit you or knock you out. And that's where, you know, sometimes we don't got to take the plus bets, right? Sometimes we could just look at, oh, that's a good favorite. Minus 165 isn't too crazy. Now, if this was minus 400, whatever the case may be, for it to go under 2.5 rounds, there's no value there. But there is actual value. And I do think that this fight can very well end up in a finish. I don't necessarily anticipate seeing, you know, 2 big, you know, beast light heavyweights like that just plotting it out to a decision win. It could happen, but I just don't envision it like that. So the next one is Nikita Krylov via submission win is at plus 1,000. And that's one of the keys that I have here. I think Nikita Krylov could totally submit Magomed Ankalaev. I don't see what's stopping him. You know what I mean? If we're looking at the submission attempts per fight, right? Krylov, he's doing 1.5 submission attempts per fight. And, you know, Magomed Ankalaev, he's none, right? But his takedown defense is 85%. But I think that's going to change against Nikita Krylov because what he's a master at is creating those sprawls, right? Is slugging it up with you, not being afraid to trade because if it goes to the ground, well, that's fine too. And that's that advantage, right? And, you know, that's the bread and butter of these type of fighters who are really high-level BJJ practitioners, but could also knock you out as they can just move forward. And we're going to talk about fighters like that even more as we progress through this. But the last one to conclude for Nikita Krylov versus Magomed Ankalaev, which is, you know, it's for this fight to go under 1.5 rounds, and that's at plus 124. So they think that it can go, you know, maybe 2.5, under 2.5. They're pretty, you know, certain on that for the betting odds, but they really don't think it'll go under 1.5. And like I said, Nikita Krylov, what you'll see in every single one of his fights is he is a fast starter. He has submitted, you know, people that you don't think that you would submit, right? Like he submitted Ovin St. Preux. You know, he knocked out Maldonado, right? He got the decision win over Johnny Walker, but had Johnny Walker in trouble a couple different times. And then Glover Teixeira. Glover's just a beast, so that was just a slip up right there. But nonetheless, don't sleep on this dude Nikita Krylov, man. I think this is one of the times where Vegas they might not have this line right, man. Not one of the times. Clearly, they had it wrong 6 times. You know what I mean? Last week, but nonetheless, this is one that we definitely got to look at, man. So for this next fight, De La Rosa versus Maeda Bueno Silva, you know what, man? I like this fight. I think that the line is pretty accurate on this one, and I don't have too much to talk about in terms of this women's flyweight belt, but I do wanted to point out a couple of prop bets, right? So for Bueno Silva to win via submission, right now, the odds on that one are plus 325, and that's a little confusing to me because Bueno Silva, if she is anything, she is more or less a submission artist. That's basically the bread and butter of her game. 5 of her 7 wins have come via submission, so why don't they think that she can submit Montana De La Rosa? And the reason why is because Montana De La Rosa got 8 submissions under her belt, and she's only been submitted once. So I think that this, the odds makers are thinking that this might play out as a decision win. You know what I mean? This might just go to the judges. These are 2 fighters who historically, you know what I mean? Well, Montana De La Rosa, she's got 3 decisions under her belt. Bueno Silva has 1, but she doesn't have that many fights ultimately. And in the UFC, this is kind of a proving grounds match. This is a more or less a proven UFC fighter versus someone who's a prospect still trying to make their name. But this is what we need to look at, man. Montana De La Rosa, she is one of those fighters who is going to try to touch you up at range and do things of that nature, right? So when you have a Bueno Silva who is just like that fighter that I just talked about in Nikita Krylov earlier, where she walks forward, she throws a big right hand and left hook. She has a beautiful right hand and left hook combination that comes down the pipe, and she's not afraid to throw it because you'll find her on her back for the majority of her fights. Why? Because she has a very aggressive open guard, or an active guard, I guess I should say. She has a very, very active guard, and she's able to submit the best of them, man. It was really crazy to see that they have a common opponent in Romero Borella, right? Both Bueno Silva and De La Rosa fought them in their last 5. It was Bueno Silva's last fight, and it was De La Rosa's 2 fights ago for her. And what was interesting about that is that Montana De La Rosa, while she had, you know, Borello, she had her in trouble. She had her back multiple times. Bueno Silva, she was able to just snag that armbar off her back and just crank it, and that was it. And that was the fight. And that's the difference in BJJ between these 2 fighters, I believe, is that Bueno Silva, she can just pull those kind of like a Gilbert Burns, right? It doesn't matter where you are bar, but she will find a way to kind of grab. She'll switch between the arm triangle and the arm bar, or just a triangle choke and an arm bar choke, and she'll keep switching back and forth and trying different submissions time and time and time again. And that's what makes it really dangerous, man. So, I pretty much agree with this line, but I do think De La Rosa, her one opportunity to truly win this fight is on points. And that's what's interesting, is because the betting line for De La Rosa to win on points is plus 165. Now, the betting line on Silva, like I said earlier, to win via submission is plus 325. So they think Buena Silva is going to win. She's only gone to a decision, one time in her career thus far, but they don't necessarily believe that she could win via submission, and that's what's interesting to me. So these are things that we need to take a look at. But the biggest one is that if this fight goes the distance, the odds on that are minus 200. So whether you like Montana De La Rosa or whether you just think that this can be more or less of a stalemate of a chess match and it's just going to go to the distance, nonetheless, it doesn't really matter. I think that these are good lines to be looking at. Minus 200 for this fight to go the distance, or plus 165 for De La Rosa to win by points, or plus 325 via submission. Now, I guess the last one that I have on this is for Buena Silva to win round one, we're at plus 1,500. Well, if she can grab Montana De La Rosa and somehow, get her in trouble with some submission attempts, that might work. Now, I don't think that's the best bet because, in all honesty, De La Rosa, she has good top control. So, it's something to think about, but pretty good line here. Now, we're going to skim through this Munoz-Rivera because this is a rematch, right? So, we got a couple rematches on this card. So, we got Pedro Munoz versus Jimmy Rivera, number 2. Now, in their first fight a couple years back, Jimmy Rivera, he won very close, right? It was I think he won 2 rounds to 1 versus Munoz. But it comes down to this: Pedro Munoz, he gets himself into firefights far too often. You know what I mean? If we're looking at Pedro Munoz, his last 2 have come against Frankie Edgar and Aljamain Sterling. He lost a split decision to Edgar and a unanimous decision to Sterling. Now for Jimmy Rivera, he beat Cody Stamann in his last fight, unanimous decision, which is really good. Cody Stamann's a really high-level wrestler, so that goes to show Jimmy Rivera has a good takedown defense. And then his last fight, Piotr Jan, who is the, bantamweight champ right now. So what it's looking like to me is this, man. Pedro Munoz, his best bet at winning this fight is being able to snag the takedown on Jimmy Rivera and possibly submit him. That's his best bet. Jimmy Rivera, I think he's going to be a little bit better, a little bit sharper on the feet, and he throws extended combinations, not just 1-2 like Pedro Munoz, who's got heat on his punches, but he really leaves it at a 1-2, while Jimmy Rivera, he'll counter strike Pedro Munoz's 1-2 with the 3-4 punch combo. And that's kind of the big difference, is that Jimmy Rivera got real pop and he extends his combinations so that he's able to tag Munoz just a little bit more. So nonetheless, man, generally they say that the rematch most likely is going to go to the winner. That's not going to happen every single time, but I think unless Pedro Munoz can somehow, some way find a way to get Jimmy Rivera on his butt and to just control him there, or try to look for that guillotine, his coveted guillotine, I think it's going to be more or less the same outcome, right? So Pedro Munoz, he's ranked number 8, and Jimmy Rivera is ranked number 9, but it looks like, to me at least, when I'm looking at this one, minus 155 for Rivera, let's take it. Let's take that one, you know what I mean? If we want to go on a couple of props, right, let's hit Rivera by points, minus 110. That's even a little bit better than Rivera at minus 155 just for a win. So that's what I got on that one. Now, I told you guys earlier that some of these main card picks are going to kind of overlap into my best bets, which is why I just think, we got 12 minutes left on the clock. Why not just look over to the best bets? Because Hill and Yoder and Caceres and Kroom are both on my best bets. So let's take a look over there, right? So I'll hit those ones just a little bit later, because the first one that I want to talk about is Sabina Mazo versus Alexis Davis in the women's bantamweight division. Now, I actually believe Davis is the A side and Mazo is the B side, so I messed up on that one, but nonetheless. Sabina Mazo is a minus 225 favorite over Alexis Davis, who is a plus 170 underdog. And this is a really interesting fight to me because, first off, Sabina Mazo, man, for being such a young prospect, man, she's pretty highly favored in this one. I know Alexis Davis is an old gun, you know what I mean? She's kind of one of those grizzled vets, but nonetheless, she has the experience advantage, and I think that's got to count for something. So Alexis Davis is 19-10, Sabina Mazo is 9-1, and the story here is that Sabina Mazo is this long, rangy striker, right? She got a 70-inch reach, which is pretty damn long for a bantamweight in the women's division, but Alexis Davis got a 68-inch reach, so she's just right there with her, more or less. And Alexis Davis is not that shorter either, so Mazo, her big thing is that she's longer and rangier and taller than everybody else that she's fighting, but this is pretty comparable here. Now, Sabina Mazo is a slow starter and she's a point fighter, more or less, right? She got a couple submission wins under her belt, but it's not like she's just BJJ killing it, you know what I mean? Active guard doing stuff like that. It's more beating up on her opponent, slipping in a rear naked choke at the end of the fight like she did to Justine Kish. So, you know, Sabina Mazo, I'm really high on her. I think that she's going to be a legit contender here in the next couple of years, but I still think she's in that prospect range. You know, if she can get a win over Davis and then fight somebody, because Davis is ranked right now. So if she could get a win over Davis, then possibly go and fight somebody a little bit higher up those rankings in the women's bantamweight division, then we're really going to be talking. And these lines might start shifting even more, even higher and higher. But the big thing for me is that Alexis Davis, one of her strong suits is top control, right? Getting you against the cage, clinching you up, body and knees, putting you on the ground, top control, dropping big ground and pound. Now, Sabina Mazo is far too comfortable with going onto her back and just trying to kind of ride it out, get back up to her feet and kind of do the thing, right? So I think that Alexis Davis's best chance at victory in this fight, at least, is to take that approach, right? Don't stand up with her, because when Alexis Davis stands up, generally she likes to follow her opponent. She doesn't cut off the ring to the best of the capabilities of some of the other women's bantamweight, some of the big strikers in the women's bantamweight division. So I do think that her best chance at victory, like I said, is to just somehow, some way, just get her, you know, she got long legs and long arms, just grab her down and hold her there and just try to ground and pound all day long. So when I was looking at some props here, because I like the line, minus 225 for Mazo, you know what I mean? I think that this is one that people should take, you know what I mean? Like, this is one that at least has a lot of value. When I look at this, I say, okay, it's not, if it was minus, you know, 275, minus 300, that might be a little bit too steep for my liking personally, but at minus 225, I think we could take that. Now, for Mazo to win by points, because generally speaking, she is a point fighter, right? She's not really knocking people out. She got a couple submissions, but generally speaking, she's a point fighter. And in her last fight against Justine Kish, that would have went down to points. She just got that last second rear naked choke in there at the end and got the finish. So it looks a lot better on her record. But nonetheless, for Mazo to win by points, we're at minus 120. So it's much better value right there than minus 225 for Mazo. So like I'm saying, I think these lines are going to be much different, especially if she comes away with a dominant win after this fight. Now, let's just play a couple of, like, you know, thought experiments, right? Let's just say Alexis Davis did find a way to be able to just hold Mazo down and not let her utilize that striking, which is the main way that Mazo coasts to victory in the majority of the times. Well, Alexis Davis to win by points is plus 240. So it's like, all right, she's plus 170 underdog, but she's a plus 240 to win by points. So are they thinking that she's going to maybe submit Mazo or knock Mazo out? I don't necessarily see that happening. But what about this? Because this is the scenario that keeps running in my mind. If Davis can just grab a hold on to her, I said Sabina Mazo is a slow starter. Davis grabs a hold on to Mazo, holds her down in the first round, gets the top control, lands a little ground and pound, and wins round one. Well, the odds for Alexis Davis to win round number one are at plus 1,800. Now, I don't really have to tell you much. You bet $100, you get $1,800 just on her winning round one. This is one of my favorite lines that we have on this docket, which is why it's one of my best bets. For Davis to win round one plus 1,800, folks, you got to take a look at that. You just got to take a look at it. Now let's play the other side of that coin, because like this is a 50-50 chance just like anything else. Well, Sabina Mazo, all right, man, if she wants to win round one, we're looking at a plus 900 line for that one, right? And, you know, will it happen? It could. It totally could. I'm not going to sit here and say that it can't, but I've seen notoriously Sabina Mazo, while she got the nice jab, big right hand over the top, man, sometimes she just finds herself backing up. Sometimes she just tries to read her opponent and kind of just coast it out and wait till she gets that timing down, because Mazo's not the fastest striker in the world. She's not the hardest puncher in the world, but she knows where to place those strikes, right? She just knows how to time you well and just put those big, long strikes in there, those straight punches to kind of detour you off of your timing and your rhythm and your momentum. So I really like the line, minus 225 overall, or if we want to go into the points, or if we want to go into winning round one. That's something to think about. I like Alexis Davis winning round one a little bit more than I like Sabina Mazo winning it. But nonetheless, something you got to think about, folks. That's number one pick on my best bets. Now, number two is Alex Caceres, you know, Bruce Leroy versus Kevin Croom, man. The hard punching hillbilly. Now, I'm just going to say this, man. I'm familiar with Kevin Croom. I've been familiar with him for before he made his UFC debut versus Roosevelt Roberts, which got overturned. He won that. He knocked him out on 1 day's notice in the first round. But it got overturned to a no contest because he got caught, you know, for a positive marijuana test, which no longer even counts anymore, which is they should just give him the win back. It doesn't even make any sense. But nonetheless, I think this is one of the rare times where Kevin Croom, he's still going to be in this big underdog spot. I think by the end of the week, he's not going to be a plus 170 favorite. I think it'll be much closer closer to a pick'em because Bruce Leroy, Alex Caceres, man, no disrespect, but the people that he's fighting and the way that he's getting these things done, man, it's not necessarily like he's just starching people, like he's just the highest level opposition. And when you're fighting a dude like Kevin Groom, who is, under James Krause over at Glory MMA, man, that camp is on a real run right now. So I'm just going to say this about Kevin Groom. Now listen while you got the opportunity. He's got 6 knockouts on his record. He's got 10 submissions on his record and 5 decisions. So for Groom to win by knockout, he just won his last fight by knockout versus Roosevelt Roberts, who I consider to be a higher level prospect than Bruce Leroy. It's plus 700 for Groom. We got to take a look at that. Now, people are really high on his submission capabilities because he's a high-level grappler, high-level submission artist. So Kevin Groom by submission, plus 400. Another one that's not too bad, you know what I mean? But then again, if we're looking at the majority and we're looking at probability, well, Kevin Groom is more or less a... he's not a point fighter. He's got 5 decisions, you know what I mean? He's got 16 finishes and 5 decisions. So he finishes the fight way more than he goes to decision, but there's still that possibility, especially in the big show. Now, let's see, for Groom to win by points, it's plus 600, but for Caceres to win by points, we're at minus 110. So if you like Caceres here, then you can definitely go that way, but I think Groom is the value here. Groom is clearly the value, whether you go knockout, submission, or just Groom in general at plus 170. I think we have to take a look at this. You're not going to get these numbers and get these lines in a couple more months when Kevin Groom inevitably, you know what I mean? Now that he's off of his suspension, I think he's going to start getting the ball rolling and start really, trying to rack up these fights and whatnot. I just think that this is one of those things, man. It's like Anderson Silva before Anderson Silva came in, became who he was. He was this big betting underdog and people didn't really understand, what this dude was capable of. And I think the same thing about Kevin Groom. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing him to Anderson Silva. I'm just saying this is one of those situations where people just don't know yet. And that's okay. We've seen Alex Caceres fight numerous times and we saw him fight, Chase Hooper and not be able to put him away. So Kevin Groom is a scrappy dude. He's a scrappy dude who's going to continue to walk forward always. I like Kevin Groom here. Got to take a look at that plus 170 line. Now, let's hit the last one, man. We got 3 minutes, 55 seconds on the clock. So, listen. I want to preface this by saying when we have Angela Hill versus Ashley Yoder, I am one of the biggest Angela Hill fans. So I'm very biased in this. From the bat, right? But I am going to say this, as it hurts my heart to say, I think her being a minus 400 favorite over Ashley, the Spider Monkey Yoder, that's a little atrocious, man. That's a little too crazy. Why? Because do I think Hill is very talented? Yes, of course. I think she's clearly the favorite when it goes to striking and her Muay Thai and her just standing up on the feet and being able to piece up Yoder. I mean, this is a rematch as well. They already fought and Hill already got the win, and she got it pretty decisively. You know what I mean? She definitely dominated on the feet, but when it got to the ground, it got a little bit tricky. But Angela Hill was, it's not like she was a fish out of water or anything like that. She was able to hold her own for the most part. Now, this is what's interesting to me. Minus 400 favorite, man. They're really high on Angela Hill, and they should be. You know what I mean? Why wouldn't you be? Arguably, I think she should be on a 5-fight win streak, right? Her loss to Claudia Gadelha, split decision. I really think she won that fight. Her loss to Michelle Watterson was much closer. I still think Angela Hill won the fight. And if that would have been the case, then that means she would have 2 knockout wins and 3 decision wins on her record in her last 5. And, we take those 2 losses off of her record, and she would be sitting at, let's see, I'm terrible at math, but about like 14-7 as opposed to 12-9, right? So, listen, man, as much as I enjoy Angela Hill, I just want to take a look at these couple props, right? If Ashley Yoder wins by points, and the way that she would do that is by utilizing her grappling and her wrestling, right? Because she can hold people down, man. She's definitely improved since the last time that Hill fought her, which was on Tough 25, the Ultimate Fighter 25. That was a long time ago. So Yoder by points is plus 500. Oh, so Yoder was plus 280 just to if she won, she was plus 280, but by points, plus 500. Interesting. Now Yoder by submission, which I think is her best bet at victory. She's plus 1100. I don't think I got to say much on that one, folks. You take that for what it's worth, but that's an interesting line right there, and I like that because, like I said, once again, Ashley Yoder, you know what I mean? That's the name of the game. It's grappling, right? She's got 4 submissions and 4 decisions, no knockouts, man. So, I mean, she's done it before, and she can do it again. Now, I will preface she has no submissions in her last 5 fights. So that's probably why the line is so high. Now, for the most obvious bet, which is what I think would most likely happen, is for Angela Hill to win by points, we're at minus 200. So I think that's a much better bet than Angela Hill at minus 400. I would not take Angela Angela Hill at minus 400, but I would go Hill by points at minus 200. I think there's so much more value to be had there as opposed to, like I said, minus 400. You got to bet $400 to win $100. That's crazy. And seeing that Angela Hill's been robbed so many times by the judges, I can't do it to myself again. You know what I mean? I'm betting on her almost every single time, and to see the judges just tear these wins, like rip these wins away from her, it's tragic. So now, this is the big one, right? This is the real big one, because while I believe that Angela Hill, she won the first round in their first original fight, for Yoder to win the first round, we're at plus 1,600, and I think that she could do it. I think Yoder could win the first round. I think that she can just grab a hold in a sprawl. What's going to happen is Angela Hill is going to use the Muay Thai, use the striking, all that great stuff, but I think in a scramble, Ashley Yoder can grab a hold onto her, jump onto her back, do something like that, hold her down on the ground, and, you know, Angela Hill, I do think her takedown defense and her ground skills are improving, but Ashley Yoder's have been improving as well. So if she could hold her down for the first round and win that first round, that's plus 1,600 line. That's a great line. And then for the vice versa, if Hill is able to just keep it on the feet, we're at plus 900 for Hill to win the first round. So there's value in all of these picks, man. And luckily for me, man, I just hit that right on time. We got 10 seconds left, and those are my best bets, folks. Those are definitely my best bets for UFC Vegas 20. So we went over a lot of different stuff, right? We went over a lot of different stuff, and ultimately, there's a lot of different ways that we can go about this, right? So the 30 minutes are up, and that's it for the betting tips right there, but let's just do a little bit of coverage on what we just talked about, right? So just understand what I'm saying here is that you can't always just look at these money line bets. Those are totally cool, but we're digging in for value, so we have to find the props. And when we're talking about the props, obviously there's more risk, but if we take the intuition based off of all of the fight, you know, the film study that we've watched and all of the context and the history and the rematches, do I think Angela Hill is going to beat Ashley Yoder? Yes, but do I think that the game inside of the game can kind of muddy that up and make it a little more difficult? Yes, of course, which is why if Yoder wins the first round, Hill could still win the last two rounds and still win the fight. And you can make a lot of money by betting on both of those. You could bet on that Hill by points and Yoder, you know, winning round one and all of that good stuff. But now a lot of things have to fall in place and all of that stuff for this to happen. But nonetheless, man, this has been another episode of All Bets Aren't Created Equal. And like I said, they're not created equal because we have to really put a lot of tact and a lot of focus and a lot of, you know, energy and dedication into each one of these bets that we are putting up there, folks. So as always, I am your host, Derick G. Join us on Friday for our UFC Vegas 20 preview show, and join us on Monday for our UFC Vegas recap show to recap all the action that happened this weekend, or that will happen this weekend, you know what I mean, at UFC Vegas 20. Rosenstruck versus Gang. That's going to be a hell of a main card, or a main event, I should say. But nonetheless, folks, give us a follow on Instagram at All Factors Considered. Follow us on Spotify. You know, hit that little follow button. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And most importantly, like I said, you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening, whatever the case may be, head over to the YouTube. All you got to do is search Free Thinkers Club on YouTube. Subscribe to the page. Hit the notification bell so you can find all 3 of the episodes that we drop every single week. And that's what you can do to help us boost up that algorithm, man. Like I said, this is a show for the people. This is to give the information to the people, not just the sharks out there that's betting all this big money. The average Joe, just like you, me, and everybody else watching, we can all tune in. We can all make a little bit of money and all of that good stuff, folks. So at the end of the day, that's all I got for you. Like I said, you know where to find us. Until next time, folks.